Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. Better swallow that fast.
Caught me in a sip of coffee there.
How are you, John?
I'm getting caffeinated, so I'm doing better.
Is that full of coffee? Like, is it all the way?
I mean, it's not. No, it's not all the way. It's like whatever was left in the coffee pot. I poured it in here on the way.
That would be a lot of coffee.
You are judging me for
No, I'm
for
just
that
curious.
level of coffee.
How many cups of coffee do you have each day?
Oh gosh, I think I probably have 3 cups in the morning, like 3 mugs. You know,
Wow.
coffee mug.
Yeah.
What's the wow for?
That feels like a lot. I would be like so jittery and so like spazzy if I had that much.
What is normal?
I don't know. I feel like it's all relative. I'm sure people have more and people have less.
Yeah.
I have like 1.5.
Okay.
But we also, Jake and I have a French press that we use every morning, and it only makes 4 cups.
That's good.
So it
kind
like
of
very
limits
much
you.
limits us.
Yes. Yeah.
But if we had a whole pot, I bet we would drink more.
Yeah.
And then I'd be really shaky.
That reminds me of all the coffee gurus that brought all their apparatus and paraphernalia to the men's retreat a year or so ago. There were people who were drinking the Folgers in the like kitchen, and then there was like this club that was doing pour overs and fancy coffees.
Which club are you in?
Hey, if someone's gonna make me fancy coffee, I'll drink it all day. But if no one's around to do that, I have no problem walking in and drinking whatever that hot black stuff is.
Hot black stuff. I feel like I have gotten like snobbier and snobbier about coffee.
Oh yeah?
I don't love it about myself, but like the more good coffee that I've like tasted and that Jake makes for me every morning, the more the other stuff doesn't cut it.
I get it. Yeah. I mean, I've had like, nice coffee shop coffee, and it's like, wow, this is very different than what I drink at home. But what I drink at home isn't bad. We get it at Costco. We grind it there.
That's good.
Which is fun. They have that huge grinder. You probably don't know, do you?
I've seen the one at Fresh Market. I imagine it's a similar situation.
It's a similar situation. Yeah.
That is nice. Have you had Morning Brew yet?
I have. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. I've had their coffee. I had a crepe there one morning just because I was like, oh, you have crepes. I want to try that.
Yeah, that's fun.
It was a fruity crepe, and I would say that it was very sweet. It was like I'm eating dessert. Somehow we can convince ourselves that's breakfast. It has fruit on it.
Yeah. They have a strawberry matcha that's amazing.
Matcha?
Yes, you should try it. It doesn't taste like dirt.
That's what matcha was.
Yeah,
So it's just like
just green dirt.
Was like another language word for dirt.
You should try it. Everyone should try it. It's very good. The strawberry matcha. You really got to stir it because they don't stir it. And if you just take a sip, it feels like you're just taking a sip straight out of a strawberry. But you got to stir it, and then it's the portions and the ratios are correct after you stir.
It's a strawberry matcha?
Yes.
Okay.
And so like when they make it, it comes out and it's just like strawberry on bottom and matcha on top. But you got to stir it.
Okay.
All right, so everybody go try that and let me know what you think.
Support the local business. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but I didn't fully intro our podcast. This is our podcast where we talk about the sermon and highlight fun things from our church family. Something we want to highlight is something exciting coming up is our 10-year anniversary weekend.
Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to about that weekend?
Oh my gosh. I'm looking forward to all of it. I think that the one thing that comes to my mind, there's a lot of fun things that are going to be planned that I don't know as much about that other teams are planning. But I'm excited about telling some stories on Saturday night that perhaps many don't know because they weren't around in the early days.
Yes.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to all of it as well. That's going to be October 25th through the 27th. You're the dates person. That's right.
That sounds right.
So we're really looking forward to that. And that's a weekend. It's like clear the schedule. Like put it on your calendar now, cancel everything else. Like this is the first time we've ever done anything like this.
Yeah. And
we won't do anything like this again for probably another 10 years.
Yeah. You only turn 10 once.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So we're going to do it big and we want you to be there. So make sure you mark your calendar for that.
I was talking about how there's reels that show up in my feed on Sunday about people tripping. And so I'm going to have my phone ready, and I want the church family to come out to the roller skating rink that Friday night. That's family skate night.
And let's see who busts it.
Yeah, let's just all have fun. I used to love playing Dead Bug. Do you remember that game? Like going to roller skating birthday parties, and you'd play different games, and one of them was Dead Bug, where they would just like play music, you're jamming, everybody's skating, their hearts out, and then they'll stop the music, and somebody, like the guy on the mic will be like Dead Bug, and everybody has to like fall down right there,
gosh.
and then like look like a dead bug.
Wow, that's funny.
It was such a great game.
That sounds fun. Did you do the like rollerblades or the skates with like the 4?
Skates all the way. Yeah.
Wow. So I
Old
was
school.
in the Brink era. Do you know Brink?
No.
Okay, so this was like, Jesse knows, this is like my generation, our Disney movie that was just like so epic and I was so obsessed with, and it's about rollerblading. And
Wow.
so that was like one of my favorite movies, and so I was hardcore into rollerblading.
That's awesome.
And in my mind, all growing up, like you have to upgrade to rollerblades. Like you
those
just
are
have
that's
to.
the cool skates.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
you can just do so much more, all the things. I don't even know. I had never done the roller skates, the like 2 in front, 2 in bottom, until recently. I did this as an adult, and falling in your 30s on roller skates is so different
So great.
than falling as a kid.
Yes.
So everyone, I'm sure, will be very sore the next day after we do this together.
Yeah, it'll be a fun weekend.
Yes, super fun. Can't wait for it. The other thing we want to remind you of is for our members, to make sure you submit your member checkup survey. So just right off the bat, John, remind us why we do this or what's good about it.
Because we want to be healthy, and so we need to do this. We do this every year and we ask a lot of the same questions because we can kind of track our progress and see how we're doing as a church. Are we learning? Are we growing? Not just numerically, but spiritually and relationally and just sort of holistically. So it's really good. It's good for us as a church, but it's also good for us as individuals. Every year when I take it, I have to answer those questions.
Yes.
And sometimes I have to really evaluate, gosh, am I really doing this?
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yes, it really is good. Yeah, some of my like favorite conversations have come out of some of those results of just like, oh, this answer sparked a really good conversation that we need to talk about, or we need to talk about with that person. So a lot of good conversations have come from that, a lot of good self-reflection, and then just being able to celebrate what God is doing. Like we've talked about this a lot recently. We want to be a church family who like sees what God is doing, and so these results give us such a clear picture of how God is working, and it's good for us to celebrate that.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that. So fill that out if you haven't yet. All right, let's talk about Sunday. You talked about salt and light. What are some of the things that make you salty?
Salty. We all get salty, don't we, about
Yes.
certain things? Well, here's what I'll say. There have been, and probably still are, a lot of things that can get me salty, and I've kind of come to realize some of that lately, and I've just been reflecting on how that's no real way to live.
Yeah.
Like in that world where like I think because we sometimes joke about like being salty, and sorry, I'm totally like Jesus juking you right
It's
now.
okay.
But I've found a level of freedom and joy that comes from sort of not allowing myself to get salty. But I'll give you an example, like real time this morning. Okay, we're driving to school, and we're letting Hope, who is about to get her driver's license here in the next few weeks, and we're practicing this school route still, and because we have to get out on Highway 58, go down to CSLA, and so there's a couple tricky parts, and one of them is pulling out onto Highway 58 going left, and you are pulling out onto a busy road where people are going pretty fast, especially up where we're getting onto Highway 58.
Yeah.
Traffic hasn't been slowed by lights or anything at that point. And so we pull out. She had plenty of room, and this car pulls right up, like refused to really hit their brakes, only slow down enough to not hit us. And it wasn't even close, right? But they just continued to push up against her.
Wanted you to know.
My student driver, and wanted her to know that we had entered into their world without permission. and that for just a moment, I felt my blood pressure beginning to rise, and I just wanted, to like, I wanted to lash out. And I was like, hey, I do that all the time. I do that to people all the time, like, so I don't know. There's a better way than getting salty about things, like getting quickly annoyed and letting that get you angry and get you stirred up, even for just a few moments. It's not worth it, like, and now I'm like all distracted about this driver, who's just trying to do whatever they're trying to do. So, anyway, that's an answer for like what gets me salty.
Yeah, so the like actual salt that Jesus is meaning in this text is different. Like kind of the polar opposite of that, right? Like if we were to be a people who like didn't get salty about every little thing and like hold on to all of those things, then we would be the type of salt that like Jesus is calling us to. So in this passage, he says, you are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth. And so talk a little bit about this whole idea of creation, decreation, recreation that you kind of opened us up with. Tell us about that cycle.
Yeah. So you go back and you read the beginning of Genesis, and we're so familiar with the fall and when sin entered into the world, and we're familiar with kind of like what has happened since then. But in the beginning, when God was speaking these things into existence, there was all this beautiful like rhythm and cycle of life, just like of evening and morning and day and night and rest and just in creation and life, and I don't know, it's this beautiful thing, and it was good. And then and that was the creation story. And then when Adam and Eve believed the lie that God might be holding out on them, that he's not really good, and that there might be another way to live, when they said, we'll try this without your way, God, that's when death and decay and kind of a spiritual darkness entered into the world. That began all kinds of cycles of kind of devolving, decreation, so to speak, and before we know it, we're murdering one another quickly, and so then we fast forward all the way to the end of the story, and we see that God's going to make all things new, Revelation 21. And so that's kind of the ultimate renewal or recreation. But that recreation work, we really see sort of the first fruits of that in Jesus and his death, kind of taking on the sin and the decay and the darkness of the world, and dying for our sin, and then coming back to life, resurrection life. I think that's kind of the first fruit of this whole recreation story.
Yes. And so he calls us salt and light. And so we get to enter into this in-between space, like before he makes all things new completely. We're kind of in this like waiting and this in-between, but we get to be agents of recreation and kind of join him in what he is doing and what he will fully do as we prevent decay, and as we are salt and as we are light, we get to join him in what he's doing. And I feel like that is beautiful.
Yes. And I just like thinking that I'm an agent of something.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It feels like a very important thing. We're agents of reconciliation.
Let's get badges.
Yes. What if I wore around a badge that said agent of reconciliation?
Yes.
We should get those.
Yeah. Like a star?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or what is the other shape?
I'm not sure what you're doing there. You're drawing it.
A shield.
A shield?
The shield shape badge. Like police officers, right? Isn't that what they have?
Probably. Definitely.
Yes. All right. That's what we're going to get. All right. So we get to be salt and light and push back against the darkness and push back against the decay that is happening. So as we think about decay, you talked about how like our world is decaying, like because of sin, it is broken. There is like a rotting that is happening, and we see that brokenness in so many ways and in so many places. But we think we can stop the decay in lots of other ways. So a couple of the examples you gave were like, okay, we think the decay will stop if we can just get the right person in office. We think the decay will stop if we can just invent the right things or have the right education. How does some of this play out, even maybe like personally, of like, I think this will stop the decay?
Oh, gosh. Well, I just think about like, well, there's a whole I gotta be. So there's a whole like fitness industry, right? And it's like, so we should just say on the front end that like advancement of technology is really good, right? Like that we are continuing to research and find treatment for things like cancer and other things that have been the cures have been found. But like that's all really good things, right? Like that's good. It's not going to stop, because that's not how God has designed this to go down, right? But advancement in technology, medical advancement, that's all really good. Education, really good. Leaders in office that lead us in a way that is in alignment with how God has designed the world. That's good. Yes, we should want that, sorry, I wanted to make sure I said that, but then like, and even like fitness and all this, like kind of the industry of like where we can try to self-help and, try to prolong, our youth, so to speak, and kind of fight aging. Like I understand some of that. I turned 45 this week. But you can't stop it. You're not going to stop it.
Yes.
And so when I see people trying to hide their age, I think that in some ways there may be more life and joy in just leaning into it and understanding that this is part of life, not saying all those things aren't that they're all bad, like we should take care of our bodies, like I should exercise and I should not eat like a donkey,
right?
Because but not because I'm trying to live forever, because I want to be healthy so I can be present to the people around me, and so that I can continue to be salt and light in this world and I can reveal the beauty of the gospel. That's my job here.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like it takes a lot of discernment because there's a difference between like trying to prevent decay in a way that is being the salt and light that we're called to be. So like there's a good way to prevent decay from like a healthy motive and accepting your limits as a human. And then there's an unhealthy way to try to prevent decay that's like trying to play God or trying to put your hope in your own ability to prevent that decay. Does that make sense? So I feel like there's a tension between those two things, and that's where we just need the Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us into like where we're leaning, if that makes sense. Okay, so we see that we kind of put our hope in other things to stop the decay when ultimately only Jesus can stop the decay, but we get to play a role in preserving and in bringing life. So what can some of that look like? Like think about some of the spaces that our church family is in. What might it look like for them to preserve in those spaces?
Yeah, preserve, slow decay, even represent kind of the salt in the Bible kind of had this picture of sort of representing longevity or longer lasting, right? Like the world is decaying, it's not going to last, but salt represents something that can help things last longer, right? So I'm just thinking about that even in our world of lack of faithfulness and commitment, and how one of the ways that we can be salt in this world is to represent faithfulness and commitment and long lasting, being there to the end in a relationship or in a commitment that you made. You said yes and you go all the way through with it. Like that's kind of stopping the decay of our world that is so like flippant about commitments these days, and it's so easy to break things off or just not commit, not RSVP, whatever it might be.
Flakiness.
There's one example. Flakiness of our culture that's like something better may come up, or I may just not want to do it. And there's something about sticking with your commitment.
Let your yes be yes. Be faithful.
Jesus is going to talk about that later in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yes. I love that. I think that is a beautiful picture of how we can preserve in the spaces that we're in.
Here's another one. When you think about decay and death, and you walk up on a conversation or you're there, and all of a sudden this conversation turns toward an ugly direction, like about someone or something, and it's starting to stink, it's starting to rot. One of the things that we can do, whether that's at work or at school or on the playground, wherever it may be, as salt that's trying to slow that rot, is to try to redirect that conversation, try to bring it back out of the ditch, before we start dishonoring someone or getting to a place where we're all complaining about something and we've robbed ourselves of our joy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think that's really good. Yeah. This sermon had me thinking about like some of the spaces that I want to get into and like be salt and light in those spaces. But I previously have thought like, what difference will it make if I'm in that space? So like the example I've been thinking of is like, I have probably for the last like year felt this like nudge to be maybe a little more involved in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so there can be this lie, I believe, of like, why would I do that? Like what good will come of that?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that might not be the best use of my time, as if my time is so precious, And so, but like, I think this sermon helped me like reevaluate the value in just like bringing good into those spaces, bringing light, bringing salt, trying to bring a little bit of beauty into some of those spaces. Like there's value in that, even if maybe I will see my whole neighborhood come to know Jesus, but like, even if it doesn't look like the outcome I kind of have in mind or what I think would be worthwhile, there's still so much value in just being there and being salt and being light there.
Amen.
So I think the encouragement to our church family is like, what are some of those spaces that maybe you are already in, or maybe you feel Jesus inviting you to enter into? Some of those spaces where like you might not be able to like fix the decay there. You might not be able to like it will still be broken, but how can you bring a little bit of good to that space? How can you bring a little bit of salt and light to that space and see that there is so much value in you just being present there because you are salt and you are light. But so often I feel like we don't even go into some of those spaces because we think, oh, I can't fix it.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right on that. Let me read off a list of some other examples that might be helpful. So being salt and light where we are, refusing to rob our employer by being lazy on the job. That's a way to be salt and light. Refusing to rob our employees by being greedy and stingy. Being the first to help a coworker in difficulty. Being the last person to, in fact, not being a person who returns some kind of sharp, barbed reply when someone makes a comment and you want to immediately return something. Fire back with something sharp. Here's another one. Honestly seek the interests of others. Honestly dislike profane humor. I'm getting these from a book that I read by D.A. Carson. Transparent in honesty and genuine in concern for others, being meek in our demeanor and bold in our righteousness, refusing to participate in gossip, building others up when people are tearing others down, picking up trash around you when you don't have to. Those are just a few examples.
Yeah, those are good. Another one I thought of was just like honoring authority, like especially in this current moment where like it is just really easy to curse authority. And to completely just like hate them with our words and in our hearts. Like I feel like that is the water we're swimming in. It's just like anger and hatred towards authority. And
that is trickling down into our children in this culture. I see it.
I'm sure. But I think there is something unique about Christians that we can, because our hope and our trust is not in politics to stop the decay. Like we don't have to curse. We don't have to hate. We don't have to get so angry. There's something salty about us when we can be honoring and be at rest, even though there's so much unrest.
And I said it on Sunday, but I'll say it here since you brought up politics. I'm not saying, and I don't think we are saying that we shouldn't care or that we shouldn't take action. But I said on Sunday that I don't think action requires anger.
Yes, that's good.
And I don't think it requires fear either.
Yeah.
And I think that those things rob us of joy and will dim or diminish our impact as salt and light.
Yes.
When we let anger and fear drive us.
Yes, yeah. Our saltiness gets compromised because that is like the world's perspective and the world's kind of like posture towards those things. And so when we let that posture compromise our saltiness, then we're not able to show the world as clearly what he's like. Jesus has this line in this part where he says that your good deeds will give glory to our Father in heaven. So I feel like there's this way in which, like, when we are salt and light and when we do these good deeds, somehow it brings glory to God. And I was thinking through this. I'm like, how does that really work? And I was thinking about the Warren family. They come in most Sundays. I feel like they must serve in kids twice a month, because I feel like they're always coming in early and always heading back to kids to serve. And I just, every single Sunday when I see six of them, they're all so tall, they all walk in, and every time they walk in, I'm just like, wow, like, this is amazing. And every time I'm not just like, oh, the Warrens are awesome. I think to myself, like, God is so amazing that, like, he has gifted our church family with people like them. And so for me, that was just an example of like how it's connected, that you can like see somebody's good deeds and give glory to your Father in heaven.
Yeah.
And so I just think that is a picture of like what we can be and what I want to see want to have eyes to see in other people, is like, I see that good deed and that makes me like love my Father in heaven more and more. And that's powerful that we get to show that to people. And so how do you think through the difference between like showing off in like a good way, showing off your good deeds so that your Father in heaven gets glory, and then showing off in like a way that points to self? How do you navigate that distinction?
And you're getting that because later on in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is going to say, be careful about practicing your righteousness before men. Yeah. Because, there are things that we do in secret, and our Father sees us in secret, and he rewards us. So I think that because he's saying both of these things, he wants people to see our good, our light, and our good works. And then he doesn't want us to be doing these to be seen. Yes. He's talking about our heart, right? When we're not doing things to be seen so that we look amazing or awesome, then I think that brings glory to God when we're not doing that, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the way I try to distinguish it. It's about the motivation of our heart. And when we're motivated by love, and just wanting to honor the Lord through picking up trash, through stopping the gossip before it, really spins out of control. When we do things like that, we are doing them motivated by our love for God and love for these people around us.
Yeah.
When you go and you walk across the street and talk to your neighbor, that's not so they'll think Maggie's awesome.
Yeah.
It's because that person is special in the eyes of God, and they're made in the image of God, and so you do that out of love for them, not for yourself.
Yeah, that's good. Last thought I wanted to share before we close is I was listening to someone else talk about this salt and light idea, and he added the idea that like also salt makes us thirsty. Like anytime you're eating something that's really salty, you want water. And so thinking of this in terms of like who we're called to be, like that there will be something about our lives that makes people want Jesus, makes people thirsty for Jesus.
That's good.
And so I just love thinking through like, okay, there can be this like distinct flavor about us as those who follow Jesus. And we get to join Jesus in preserving and pushing back decay, pushing back darkness, and we also can live in such a way that makes people want Jesus. And so I think that's what this sermon and these ideas invite all of us into. So as you're listening, And as you go into wherever you're going after this podcast, try to think through how you can push back against darkness in the spaces you're going to be today. How can you push back decay in the spaces you're going to be today, and ask the Lord to make your life such that when people witness it, they thirst for Jesus.
Yes. Well said.
Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.